My name is Anne Anderson, and I've had a 45-year career in Irish diplomacy. It's been a lengthy journey. I spent a total of 45 years in the Irish Foreign Service. About 1/3 of that, about 15 years, was based in the Department of Foreign Affairs in Dublin. And the other part, about 30 years, was spent in a variety of postings abroad. So I served abroad as ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva, ambassador to the European Union in Brussels, ambassador to France, then at the United Nations in New York, and finally as ambassador to the United States based in Washington for 4 years. A diplomat's job is to represent her country abroad. You do this, of course, to the very best of your ability, and your challenge is to represent your country's interests and your country's values. Now, how this plays out depends on where you're posted at a particular time. So, for example, when I was ambassador at the UN, I was working on issues like human rights and peacekeeping, peace building, development issues. When I was ambassador to the European Union, I was working on trade and finance and economic issues, a whole lot of other matters related to Ireland's membership of the European Union. And then in France and in the US, I was working to strengthen the ties between the two countries, the political, economic, cultural ties to Ireland. So the elements change depending on where you're posted at a particular time. But the setting, the background, the context is always the same. You're representing your country's interests and your country's values. The honest answer to that is no. I grew up in small towns in Ireland and a very modest background. So I had never met a diplomat. I had no idea what it was to be a diplomat. To be an ambassador in my eyes would have been somebody very exotic, somebody who didn't sound like me or look like me. And it didn't help that at the time there were very few women in senior positions in diplomacy. So what changed really was my time at university. I studied history and political science at University College Dublin. I got to know a bit about international affairs. I got much more interested, and also my confidence grew. So when I was leaving university, I heard about a recruitment competition in the Department of Foreign Affairs. I decided to apply, and against my expectations, I succeeded. And that's how I came into diplomacy. I start with the rewarding part. It's an immensely rewarding career. You have this enormous privilege that you are trusted to represent your country abroad. And you're always, of course, working to the best of your ability to do that. And your job really matters. It matters in the real lives of real people, whether, like I said, you're working at the UN on human rights issues, or you're in a bilateral posted to another country, and you're working on trade and investment issues and trying to create good jobs and improve economic livelihoods back in your own countries. So it always feels very real, and you have big horizons. You live a large life. You are moving around every few years. You are engaging with different cultures, different languages. There is tremendous variety and reward. On the challenging side, it's really the other side of the coin. This moving around every few years is very stimulating, very fascinating. But of course, it can be disruptive. If you have a working partner, a working spouse, if you have school-aged children, if you have aging parents, it can be difficult to pack your bags and move every few years and rather disruptive of your life. So there are huge rewards, but one doesn't overlook the challenges either. You have to develop your skills and deepen your knowledge. Now, on the developing your skills, there are some obvious skills that are going to stand to you as a diplomat. For example, it's really important that you can speak foreign languages. So at your school, make sure you study one or ideally two foreign languages. It's also very important to be a good communicator. So you try to develop your communication skills, and particularly your public speaking skills. So if you can join a debating society or something else practical like that, that will give you the experience and the confidence of speaking publicly, do it. It's also important, of course, to deepen your knowledge about international affairs. And that means whatever way you get your information, reading the newspapers, listening to the relevant television programs, just going to your school library, spending time reading there on things that are connected to international affairs. And I would also say that nowadays, most diplomats have some kind of social media presence. So follow a few diplomats that you might be interested in, and that will give you a real sense of the life and the career and what happens on a day-to-day basis. But my overall advice is, if you're interested, go for it. It's a great career, and we need more girls doing the necessary groundwork so that they can become senior women in diplomacy.